Look at this. Chinese fighter jets slicing through the sky. Bullet trains screaming across the landscape at 350 kilometers per hour. BYD electric cars flooding European streets, undercutting every Western brand. China today dominates high-speed rail, electric vehicles, and 5G technology. But here's what they don't show you. In 1978, China couldn't mass-produce a ballpoint pen. They couldn't manufacture a reliable engine. Their factories were primitive, their technology decades behind. So what happened between then and now? Did they steal it? Did Chinese spies infiltrate every Western boardroom? Actually, no. Western companies handed it to them. Legally. Willingly. Eagerly. This is the story of the greatest trade deal in history, and how the West paid for its own obsolescence. 1978. China's GDP was $150 billion. Today? 18 trillion. That's not a typo. That's a complete transformation of the global economic order. And it started with a handshake, a contract, and the promise of 1 billion customers. Picture this. It's the 1980s. Western boardrooms are buzzing. Executives in expensive suits are staring at projections, quarterly earnings reports, shareholder pressure mounting. And then someone points to a map of China. 1 billion people. 1 billion potential customers. Can you imagine? The untapped market of the century. The executives are salivating. This is the gold rush. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. But there's a catch. There's always a catch. In 1979, China passed something called the Joint Venture Law. On paper, it seemed simple, almost generous. You can sell to our 1 billion people. You can access our market. You can build your factories here. But only if you bring a Chinese partner. And that partner, they get access to everything. Your blueprints. Your manufacturing processes. Your trade secrets. Everything. The contract terms were crystal clear. 51% Chinese ownership requirement. Mandatory technology transfer. Western companies had to train Chinese workers, share technical documents, and localize production. But Western CEOs looked at those terms and saw only dollar signs. They thought they were exploiting cheap labor. They thought they were the smart ones in the room. They didn't realize they were building their replacement. Let me take you back to 1984. Volkswagen, the German automotive giant, enters China to build the Santana sedan. It's a big moment. Germany's precision engineering meets China's massive potential workforce. VW executives are confident. They've built cars for decades. They know what they are doing. What could possibly go wrong? Here's what the contract required. VW had to train Chinese engineers. Not just basic assembly line workers, but actual engineers who understood the intricacies of automotive design. They had to transfer assembly line blueprints. Complete technical specifications. Every measurement, every process, every quality control standard. And they had to localize 80% of parts within 5 years. That meant building an entire Chinese supply chain from scratch. Watch what happens next. 1984. Chinese workers are learning German precision manufacturing. They are studying every bolt, every weld, every system. 1990s. Chinese suppliers have mastered the VW supply chain. They know how to make every component to German standards. 2010s. Companies like BYD, Geely, and NIO launch. And who's designing their cars? Engineers trained on VW assembly lines. Engineers who learned everything from the Germans themselves. Today, BYD has a fully automated electric vehicle factory that rivals anything in Germany. They are not copying anymore. They are innovating. They are leading. VW thought they were getting cheap labor for a decade or two. What they actually did was train an entire generation of engineers who would later build Tesla competitors. Engineers who would help China dominate the electric vehicle revolution. But cars were just the beginning. Let's talk about trains. High-speed rail. The technology that moves millions of people across China every single day at speeds that make American Amtrak look like a joke from the last century. 2004. China issues a challenge. We want to build a national rail network. The biggest in the world. And we are inviting the best companies on the planet to bid. Siemens from Germany. Kawasaki from Japan. Alstom from France. The titans of rail technology. These companies have spent decades perfecting high-speed rail. Billions in research and development. Countless innovations. This is their crown jewel technology. The Chinese government creates a bidding war. Not just who can build it cheapest, but who will give us the most technology. Who will transfer the most knowledge. The contract clause is explicit. You must transfer all technical documents to CRRC, the Chinese State Railway Company. Everything. Every blueprint. Every specification. Every engineering secret you've spent decades developing. Now, these Western companies know what they are signing. They are not naive. But they do a calculation. They pull out their spreadsheets. Initial contract value. $10 billion. Projected market dominance. 20 years, maybe more. China will need trains forever. Risk assessment. They write it down. China can't innovate. They are good at copying, sure, but true innovation. That requires a culture of creativity, academic freedom, research institutions that the Chinese system can't replicate. They market. Low risk. They were catastrophically wrong. 2004. Siemens transfers their ICE train technology. The pride of German engineering. 2008. Just 4 years later. Chinese engineers have reverse-engineered the designs. But they don't just copy. They improve them. They make them faster, more efficient. 2011. CRRC launches the CRH 380A. It's faster than the original German model. Faster than what Siemens built. 2017. China is exporting trains back to Europe. Back to Germany. Back to Japan. And they are doing it at 30% lower cost. Siemens executives must have felt sick. Kawasaki must have realized the magnitude of their mistake. They handed over the blueprints for quarterly profits. Within 10 years, China wasn't just competing. They were dominating. They had taken Western technology, scaled it beyond anything the West imagined, and then undercut the original creators in their own markets. But here's what most people miss. It wasn't just about getting blueprints. China learned something far more valuable. They learned the hidden systems that make manufacturing work. The invisible architecture of modern production. From Toyota joint ventures, they learned just-in-time manufacturing. The art of having exactly what you need, exactly when you need it, with zero waste. From Motorola, they learned Six Sigma quality control. The statistical methods that ensure consistency and eliminate defects. From GM, they learned lean production. How to streamline every process, cut every unnecessary step, maximize efficiency. Western companies taught China these systems because they needed them to make the joint ventures profitable. They never imagined what China would do with that knowledge. China took these Western systems and scaled them in ways no Western company could match. How? Government subsidies that distorted every market calculation. No Western company could compete when the Chinese government was willing to lose money for a decade to build dominance. A massive labor pool that could staff factories running 24 hours a day. And centralized planning that could build entire supply chain cities. Imagine this. In the West, a factory might source parts from suppliers scattered across 3 continents. In China, they built industrial zones where the entire supply chain exists within a 50-kilometer radius. Every component, every supplier, every service. All right there. By 2015, look at what had happened. China controlled 80% of rare earth processing, 60% of solar panel production, 70% of lithium battery manufacturing. They didn't just learn to build products. They controlled the entire pipeline. From raw materials to finished goods. The West had become dependent on China for the building blocks of modern technology. Then came 2015. China launches Made in China 2025. A strategic plan that sends shockwaves through Western intelligence agencies. The message is clear. We are done being imitators. Now we become innovators. Now we lead. And this is where the story gets darker. Because legal technology transfer wasn't enough anymore. Once China learned the game, they changed the rules. Let me tell you about AMSC. American Superconductor. A wind turbine technology company. In 2011, their Chinese partner Sinovel did something unthinkable. They stole AMSC's software code. The proprietary technology that controlled wind turbines. AMSC lost 84% of their revenue almost overnight. They nearly went bankrupt. Meanwhile, Sinovel became the world's largest wind turbine maker. Built on stolen American technology. Or Nortel. Once a Canadian telecom giant. For over 10 years, Chinese hackers infiltrated their networks. 10 years. They stole research and development for next-generation networks. Technology that took decades to develop. Where did it show up? In Huawei products. Nortel. Bankrupt by 2009. Huawei. Now a global telecommunications superpower, despite Western sanctions. Courtroom documents prove it. FBI case files confirm it. This wasn't paranoia. This was systematic industrial espionage at a scale the world had never seen. So where are we now? Look at the battlefield today. Electric vehicles. BYD outsells Tesla globally. A Chinese company beating the American innovation darling. Commercial aircraft. The C919 competes directly with the Boeing 737. China building passenger jets that can challenge American aerospace dominance. Semiconductors. SMIC, despite every Western sanction, is approaching 7-nanometer chips. Getting closer to cutting-edge technology that was supposed to be impossible without Western equipment. AI and 5G. Huawei dominates globally, despite being banned in America and other Western nations. Here's the irony that should make your blood run cold. Today, Western politicians are banning Chinese products. Restricting Chinese technology. Building walls and barriers. But go back and watch footage from the 1990s. The same politicians, or their predecessors, celebrating free trade with China. Shaking hands with Chinese officials. Praising the opportunities. Promising that engagement would change China. In 1990, Western tech companies dominated almost every sector. Computing, telecommunications, automotive, aerospace, manufacturing. Draw that graph to 2024. The decline is shocking. In sector after sector, Chinese companies have caught up or overtaken Western leaders. So let's ask the uncomfortable question. Who really won? Western companies got rich. That's undeniable. CEOs made millions. Shareholders saw returns. Quarterly earnings looked fantastic for years. But Western workers, they lost jobs. The Rust Belt collapsed. Manufacturing towns became ghost towns. Entire communities destroyed. Meanwhile, Chinese workers gained skills, infrastructure, and wealth. An entire nation transformed from poverty to middle income in a single generation. Was this theft? Or did we sell our future for quarterly earnings reports? Did Chinese spies steal the West's technological advantage? Or did Western executives hand it over, wrapped in a bow, because they couldn't see past the next shareholder meeting? The greatest heist in history wasn't a robbery. It was a contract. Legal. Approved. Signed by the smartest business minds in the Western world. They saw 1 billion customers and couldn't resist. They saw cheap labor and thought they were the exploiters. They never imagined that China was playing a longer game. A generational game. A civilizational game. Western companies optimized for quarterly profits. China optimized for century-long dominance. Western CEOs answered to shareholders demanding immediate returns. Chinese planners answered to a government willing to lose money for decades to build strategic capabilities. It was never a fair fight, because they weren't even playing the same game. And here's the terrifying truth. This story isn't over. Right now, today, China is using the same playbook in Africa. Belt and Road Initiative. Infrastructure projects. Technology partnerships. Training programs. The exact same strategy. Offer investment. Demand technology transfer. Build local capabilities. Create dependency. In 20 years, will we be telling the same story about how Africa became the next manufacturing superpower, using Chinese technology learned from the West? The joint ventures of the 1980s seemed like obvious wins. Everybody profits. Everybody benefits. But they were Trojan horses. Beautiful on the outside, hiding something transformative inside. Western companies got their profits. China got the future. And now, as we try to rebuild manufacturing, restart supply chains, and compete with Chinese technology, we are learning the price of those quarterly earnings. We are learning what happens when you teach someone everything you know, assuming they'll never become better than you. The bill has come due. And it's far more expensive than anyone imagined.